What's up, y'all? My name is JR, and for those of you who don't already know, I'm a huge movie and TV nerd. If you're new here, I appreciate you taking the time to check out my channel. I hope you'll consider sticking around and joining the film community I'm trying to build here on YouTube. So in today's video, I'm going to be giving my reaction and review of the supernatural horror film, Five Nights at Freddy's 2. And just so you guys know, this video will contain spoilers, so if for some reason you haven't gotten out to the theaters to see this movie yet, and you don't want to know anything that happens in it, you might want to exit this video now. And with that being said, no more wasting time. Let's get into it. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is an American-made supernatural horror film based on the video game series Five Nights at Freddy's, created by Scott Cawthon and the sequel to the 2023 film adaptation. The film was directed by Emma Tammy and written by Cawthon. Josh Hutcherson, Elizabeth Lail, Piper Rubio, Theodis Crane, and Matthew Lillard reprised their roles from the previous film, with Freddie Carter, Skeet Ulrich, Wayne Knight, McKenna Grace, and Teo Briones also joining the cast. Set a year after the previous film, it follows Abby Schmidt as she reconnects with her animatronic friends, leading to events that reveal the origins of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Now, Cawthon stated back in August of 2018 that there could be a second Five Nights at Freddy's film based on the events of the series' second video game if the first film was successful. Hutcherson revealed the development of a sequel in January of 2024 with Blumhouse Productions, confirming it 3 months later. Principal photography began in November of 2024 and concluded in February of 2025 in New Orleans and surrounding communities. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 premiered at the TCL Chinese Theater on December 2nd of this year and was released in the United States by Universal Pictures on December 5th. And the film has received negative reviews from critics and was a commercial success, grossing $111 million worldwide against a budget between $36 and $51 million. And at the time of the making of this video, the movie has an abysmal 15% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 96 critic reviews. But its popcorn meter currently sits at a surprising 87% based on over 2,500 verified ratings. The movie has a Metascore of 62 on Metacritic based on just 5 critic reviews, with a user score of 7.6 based on 689 user ratings. And finally, the movie has a 5.7 out of 10 on IMDb with over 10,000 ratings. So look, I wasn't really a fan of the first installment of this franchise, but I'll admit to you guys that I never played the video game, so I didn't really have any sense of loyalty to the IP in that way. And after having gone to see the first film, I wasn't all that impressed. In fact, I believe I gave the film a 45% in the video I made on it 2 years ago. So, as this film approached, I thought about what my expectations should be, and I walked into the theater not expecting much from the film at all. But I can admit that the movie ended up being better than I expected it would be. Now, I'll start off by telling you guys that this movie is darker than the original one was. And Scott Cawthon used horror elements much differently than he and his team of writers that wrote the original movie did, and I think that alone made this a much better movie than its predecessor. And I'll even go so far as to tell you that I believe that there were 5 writers on the first film and only 1 on this one. And maybe that's what made the difference, right? You know, the first film maybe had too many cooks. This one, you know, maybe they said, hey, look, there's too many writers on the first film. Let's boil it down to 1 and let's see if we can get something that feels a little bit more cohesive. And I'll admit to you guys that that is what we got here, was a film that I felt at least was better in that regard than the first film was. And so I like the fact that, like I said, a darker film, but also a film that kind of felt a little more cohesive in its storytelling, moving throughout the narrative. Now, the film focuses more on Vanessa, played by the lovely Elizabeth Lail, in this story, as we learned a lot more about her childhood, and her family as she and Mike struggle to both define their relationship after the events of the first film and move on from the trauma surrounded by said event. And this was kind of interesting because, you know, the first film focused a lot on Mike, and here we focused a bit more on Vanessa, which I thought that kind of made some sense to kind of balance the storytelling out a bit here in the second installment. And so I kind of appreciated that. That Mike's character, though deeply involved, and Abby's character still, of course, deeply involved, that a lot of this film was kind of about Vanessa and just kind of, learning more about her and kind of her family and her past and even past friends and that kind of thing. Matthew Lillard returns for this film. And despite the fact that I didn't really like his casting in the last film, and when I say that, I've been getting some pushback about that because there's some people that said he was the best thing about the last movie. And if you want to look at it that way, okay, fine, fair game. When I say I didn't like his casting, what I mean is I didn't like them choosing him to play Vanessa's father. I thought that there were, some better actors that would have, just kind of fit that role a little bit better. I didn't say he was a bad actor. I didn't say he did a bad job. I said he was a bad choice, just as a choice. This doesn't have anything to do with his talent as an actor. I just, when I saw that he was playing the father, I was like, I don't know if he really fits. That's more what I meant. And despite the fact that I did not like his casting in the last film, I do think that the way they utilized him in this film was much better. It was smart, and it absolutely added depth to Vanessa's character, and it upped the fear factor in this movie for me, for sure. Now, as the rest of the casting goes, I thought it was fine, even though I just, there's a large portion of the cast that makes an appearance in the movie simply to be dispatched expeditiously. And, I don't typically like stuff like that because I kind of go, if you're going to bring a bunch of characters into the movie to die like 2 minutes later, you just kind of go, I get it, but at the same time, it feels like a waste to me. But I'm not going to eat the writer's lunch for that. I mean, I guess, you got to reiterate how dangerous these animatronics are, even though I felt like we did that in the flashback at the beginning of the film. But, again, I digressed. And despite, again, me not loving Matthew Lillard's inclusion in the first film, I absolutely love Skeet Ulrich's casting in this one. In fact, I thought it was absolute genius from a marketing standpoint, especially given Lillard's appearance in this movie too, having the two Scream co-stars back together again, especially how they're related in Scream. I thought that was a real treat for me. I really enjoyed that. Now, I thought the acting was fine overall, and Piper Rubio, being a bit older now and her performance a bit more refined, as one would expect, right? As you get older, you get a little better at the acting thing, and you can kind of give more nuanced performances. And I think that also helped this film in comparison to the first one, right? Anytime you've got a story that's depending heavily on child actors, you got to kind of just understand that, it's going to be difficult to pull those, great and grand performances out of someone so young. That's not even a shot at her acting ability. It's just young actors aren't as good as more seasoned, more experienced, older actors. And that's just kind of what it is there. I did think the film fell victim to overcharacterization in a few spots. None more obvious than Mr. Berg, who was played by Wayne Knight. I didn't really like what they did with his character because they almost turned him into a cartoon villain. And even though this is kind of like a more kid-centric movie, you got a story that kind of revolves a lot around a child who, her friends, so to speak, are, trapped in these animatronics over at, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and that kind of thing. But the teacher, Mr. Berg, was just so out of pocket to the point of it almost kind of pulled you out of the story a bit because you were just like, this guy's doing the absolute most. And the way that he treated Abby's character, it would be one thing if Abby was just like this super problem child in class and that kind of thing, but he was just going ham for no reason about the science fair and about her participation in the science fair and that kind of thing. And it was just kind of weird. I was just like, I felt like maybe they could have been a little more subtle with that, because it's clear that they made Mr. Berg this supervillain almost, so that when he finally meets with Chica, she could kill him and everybody would just kind of be like, good. You know what I mean? This was clearly one of those things that was done, purely in order to facilitate the occurrence of certain plot points. And that was kind of weird for me. It was just a lot. And speaking of plot, I thought the beat progression in this film could have definitely used more thought, as there were some things that took place in this movie that just didn't make very much sense. Again, some of them simply so Carlton could try to inject the story with more action and to make the film scarier, right? That being said, I thought the small writing, for the most part, was serviceable, especially for a movie like this one. You don't need, what I call bars, right? Really profound lines and things like that. You just kind of need the characters to talk like real people and make decisions like real people, and that's about it. Your regular run-of-the-mill screenwriter can kind of get that done, so no muss, no fuss. But again, I did think that the writing was an improvement from the first movie, in my opinion. Again, like I said, I just think that there were less cooks in the kitchen, and that's what kind of made the film kind of have a little bit more cohesiveness to it than the first one did. And I also thought there was a little bit too much of a seesaw effect throughout the movie's finale. Even though Carlton manages to make everything that happened in the finale make some sense, I understood why certain things were taking place, even though it was a lot. And the main characters ultimately make some choices near the end of the story that disappointed me personally. But then once we got to the cliffhanger ending, I kind of understood why certain things were done the way that they were done when you see how the movie ends. But I was kind of disappointed, and in the cliffhanger ending, it told me that we should probably maybe expect a Five Nights at Freddy's 3 in the very near future. Now, overall, I'd give this film a 65%, or a 6.5 out of 10 if you're thinking IMDb score. Essentially a C- for a letter grade. Again, if you've seen my review on the first movie, then you already know I didn't like that movie at all. And again, this movie, I'll admit to you guys, I feel a bit differently about. Not so much that this movie is great by any means, but I like the fact that it is a vast improvement over the first installment. And so, if you're someone who happened to like the first movie, or you're a fan of the video games, I think you'll like this movie as well, given that the filmmakers seem to have learned all the right lessons from the first film. And so one can only hope that if we do indeed get a Five Nights at Freddy's 3, we might actually get a film that's really good. But what do you guys think? Have you had a chance to go check out Five Nights at Freddy's 2 yet? If you have, what did you think about the shift in overall tone of the film? What did you think about how Matthew Lillard was used in this story? What did you think of Skeet Ulrich's joining him in the film? What did you think of the cliffhanger ending? Do you think we'll get another movie? Let me know in the comments. And for those of you that might be new to the channel, be sure to like and share this video. If you really like the content, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. You can also now support the channel by leaving a super thanks. If you should be so inclined, I'd greatly appreciate it. Also, feel free to subscribe to my new Shorts channel and Reaction channel for additional content. The links are in the description. In addition, be sure to go and check out themadScreenwriter.com for more television and film reviews and info on my upcoming film projects. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I got screenplays to write. And I'll catch y'all on the next video.